Literally, he would walk down the street and people bowed to him out of courtesy and out of respect, because he was the symbol of the civil rights movement.
Born and raised in Knoxville, Avon Rollins was just 19 years old when he first met Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
The first time I met Dr. King was here in Knoxville, Tennessee, when he was a commencement speaker at Knoxville College. And that was just for a very brief second, because so many people were there to meet him. And I never thought that I would end up, being up close to Dr. King.
I have a dream.
Rollins, now 61 and a retired senior TVA manager, became close enough to King to stand on stage with him during his famous Make a Dream speech. And when King died, Rollins was at the front of his burial procession. As a leader of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, Rollins was on the cutting edge of the civil rights movement. In Knoxville, he organized demonstrations to open theaters, restaurants, and hospitals to African Americans. He says he was arrested at least 30 times and frequently hid in car trunks while traveling in the South.
It's hard to vision armored tanks in America with submachine guns mounted on them to keep people from eating at restaurants or to register to vote.
That all men are created equal.
While campaigning across the country, Rollins heard dozens of King's sermons and speeches.
Dr. King was a tremendous orator. I would hear him evening after evening, on occasion after occasion. And oftentimes it would be the same speech, but it would move you, as if you had heard it for the first time.
And in addition to being a gifted speaker, Rollins says King was also a swimmer and an arm wrestler.
Dr. King was not a big person. He couldn't beat many people arm wrestling. And so we just, just to take him down. But on occasion, I guess I would let Dr. King win to show a degree of respect.
My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
Before the world knew Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as the leader of the civil rights movement, George Haley knew him as a fellow student and friend at Morehouse College.
And that's smart that he is.
In fact, that's how he likes to remember him.
I see us at Morehouse, I guess, and just as students there. A lot of times people call him ML, but I call him Martin. But we came to know each other much better because of our church connections.
Haley and King participated in neighboring congregations. They both were angered by injustice and driven to bring about change peacefully.
This is the first time that I had invited him to come to the Kansas scene, and this is a group of business leaders.
As Dr. King marched for equality, Haley fought for civil rights in the political arena. As a state senator in Kansas, he invited Dr. King to his state several times.
It was a kind of joyous time for us that we could talk about, say, the state of affairs in the world then, and our families and Morehouse.
He even got him to sign his Morehouse yearbook. Years later, he got Coretta to sign the same page.
That was the last time I really saw him.
3 months later, Dr. King was assassinated.
Is Martin dead? You could hardly believe it. That kind of thing. We men in Morehouse were sitting there crying like children, you understand, because one of our real leaders had gone.
Even though it's been decades since his passing, Haley says Dr. King's dream lives on in each of us.
He did his work. Now it remains for those of us who are still here to do what we are expected to do.
I have a dream today.
It means that we continue to work toward having a better life for all of us.
Some of us had been in and out of the room during the day. Dr. King had been teaching some of us, and Dr. King said, I want you to pray, Precious Lord, and play it real pretty. And he stood up and we heard the pop. And he was no more. Chauncey Estridge, who was the attorney who was trained in criminology, ran out of the parking lot looking. But all of the policemen and all of the African-American policemen had been withdrawn from the site the day before. So there were nothing but white policemen there. And they all ran into the courtyard asking us what had happened. You will see on the balcony people pointing across the street. But Dr. King was really gone before he left the balcony. He looked at Ralph Abernathy as their eyes locked, as if to say to him, you got to carry it on now.